Imagine a land of vibrant diversity, where countless languages, religions, and cultures thrived in harmony for centuries until a cunning strategy turned unity into discord. Welcome to the sands of history, where we uncover the British colonial tactic of divide and rule in India, a policy that reshaped a nation and left echoes that linger to this day. This intricate web of manipulation exploited India's rich diversity to maintain control, pitting communities against each other for the benefit of a foreign empire. Like, share, and subscribe to dive deeper into the past with us, and check out the links in the description to help us financially as we bring these stories to life. Historical context. India. Before the British. India, before the arrival of European colonizers, was a tapestry of kingdoms, cultures, and communities. The subcontinent was home to Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists, and others, coexisting under various rulers, from the mighty Mughals to regional dynasties. While conflicts existed, they were often political or territorial rather than purely religious. The Mughal Empire, for instance, fostered a syncretic culture, blending Persian, Indian, and Islamic traditions. Emperors like Akbar promoted policies of tolerance, such as interfaith dialogues and marriages, creating a relatively cohesive society. However, by the 17th century, the Mughal Empire began to weaken due to internal strife and external pressures. This fragmentation provided an opportunity for European powers, particularly the British, to establish their foothold. The British East India Company, initially a trading entity, gradually transitioned into a political and military force. By the mid-18th century, after victories like the Battle of Plassey, 1757, the British began consolidating power, setting the stage for their divisive colonial strategies. The genesis of divide and rule, the divide and rule policy, or divide et impera, was not unique to India. It was a hallmark of colonial empires worldwide. In India, the British recognized that governing a vast, diverse population required more than military might. It demanded control over the social and political fabric. The policy aimed to exploit existing differences, religious, caste-based, linguistic, and regional, to prevent unified resistance against colonial rule. The British were astute observers of Indian society. They noted tensions between Hindus and Muslims, upper and lower castes, and regional rivalries. Rather than fostering unity, they deliberately amplified these differences to ensure that no single group could challenge their authority. This strategy was systematic, embedded in administrative policies, economic structures, and even cultural narratives, as we'll explore in the following sections. Implementation of divide and rule. The British employed several mechanisms to implement their divide and rule strategy, each carefully designed to deepen social fractures. Religious divisions. One of the most significant fault lines exploited was the Hindu-Muslim divide. The British portrayed themselves as neutral arbiters, claiming to protect both communities while subtly favoring one over the other at different times. For instance, after the revolt of 1857, which saw Hindus and Muslims unite against the East India Company, the British shifted their favor toward Hindus, branding Muslims as disloyal and reducing their representation in government and military roles. This sowed distrust between the communities. The introduction of separate electorates in the Morley-Minto reforms of 1909 formalized religious divisions in politics. Muslims were given reserved seats in legislative councils, ostensibly to protect their interests, but this move entrenched communal identities and discouraged interfaith political alliances. The British also supported the formation of the All India Muslim League in 1906, which later became a counterpoint to the Indian National Congress, further polarizing Hindu-Muslim relations. Caste and social stratification. The British also manipulated India's caste system to their advantage. They conducted detailed censuses that rigidly categorized people by caste and religion, reinforcing hierarchical divisions. This was a departure from the fluid caste identities that existed in pre-colonial India, where social mobility was possible in certain contexts. By codifying caste, the British created a rigid framework that deepened social inequalities and prevented unified resistance. They also favored certain caste groups, such as the upper caste elites, for administrative roles, while marginalizing lower castes and tribal communities. This ensured that loyalty to the colonial regime was tied to social privilege, further fragmenting Indian society. Regional and linguistic fragmentation. India's linguistic and regional diversity was another tool in the British arsenal. They redrew boundaries and created provinces that often ignored cultural and historical ties, fostering regional rivalries. For example, the partition of Bengal in 1905 was justified as an administrative necessity, but was designed to weaken the growing nationalist movement in Bengal by dividing it along religious lines, Muslims in East Bengal and Hindus in West Bengal. The move sparked widespread protests, forcing its reversal in 1911, but the damage to communal harmony was done. Economic exploitation and division. Economically, the British pitted different groups against each other to maintain control. They favored certain communities, such as the Parsis and Marwaris, in trade and commerce, creating economic disparities that fueled resentment. Land revenue policies, like the permanent settlement in Bengal, enriched a small class of landlords while impoverishing peasants, many of whom belonged to lower castes or minority religions. This economic stratification ensured that grievances were directed at fellow Indians rather than the colonial rulers. Military and administrative strategies. The British Indian Army was another arena where divide and rule was evident. After 1857, the British restructured the army to include martial races specific ethnic groups like Sikhs, Gurkhas and Pathans, while excluding others, particularly Bengalis and South Indians, deemed non-martial. This created a sense of superiority among certain groups and prevented the army from becoming a unified force against colonial rule. Recruitment policies ensured that soldiers from different regions and religions were stationed far from their homelands, reducing the risk of collective rebellion. Consequences of divide and rule. The divide and rule policy had profound and lasting consequences for India. While it enabled the British to maintain control for nearly 2 centuries, it left deep scars on the social and political landscape. Communal tensions. The policy exacerbated Hindu-Muslim tensions, which culminated in the tragic partition of India in 1947. The creation of separate electorates and the encouragement of communal organizations like the Muslim League and Hindu Mahasabha laid the groundwork for the demand for Pakistan. The partition led to unprecedented violence, displacement and loss of life, with millions affected by communal riots and forced migration. Weakened nationalist movement. By fostering divisions, the British delayed the emergence of a cohesive nationalist movement. While leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru worked tirelessly to bridge communal and regional divides, the British constantly undermined these efforts through propaganda and selective patronage. The Indian National Congress faced challenges in uniting diverse groups, as communal identities often overshadowed national ones. Social fragmentation. The codification of caste and religious identities created rigid social boundaries that persisted beyond independence. The emphasis on communal electorates and caste-based policies entrenched divisions that continue to influence Indian politics and society. The British portrayal of India as a land of irreconcilable differences also shaped global perceptions, overshadowing its history of syncretism and coexistence. Legacy of mistrust. The policy fostered a legacy of mistrust among communities. The British narrative that Hindus and Muslims could not coexist without external mediation lingered in the post-colonial period, complicating efforts to build a unified nation. Similarly, caste and regional divisions created challenges for social cohesion and equitable development. Resistance and unity. India's response. Despite the British efforts to divide, Indians showed remarkable resilience in forging unity. The Revolt of 1857 was an early example of Hindus and Muslims fighting side by side against colonial rule. The Indian National Congress, founded in 1885, became a platform for diverse groups to unite under the banner of nationalism. Leaders like Gandhi emphasized communal harmony through movements like the Khilafat movement, which brought Hindus and Muslims together in the 1920s. Grassroots movements, such as those led by social reformers like Jyotiba Phule and B.R. Ambedkar, challenged caste hierarchies and sought to unite marginalized communities. The eventual success of India's independence movement in 1947 was a testament to the power of collective resistance, even in the face of colonial manipulation. Conclusion: Lessons from the sands of history. The British divide and rule strategy in India was a masterclass in colonial control, exploiting diversity to maintain power. Yet, it also revealed the resilience of a people who, despite engineered divisions, found ways to unite and reclaim their destiny. The scars of this policy, communal tensions, social stratification, and regional rivalries remind us of the dangers of division and the importance of unity in diversity. As we reflect on this chapter of history, let's commit to learning from the past to build a more inclusive future. Like, share, and subscribe to keep exploring the sands of history with us, and check out the links in the description to help us financially as we continue to uncover these vital stories.